Hi guys, this is going to be the Battle of the Titans for the #1 spot. Which is the best Survivor game on PS4? Is it Dead by Daylight or is it Friday the 13th game? Let's find out. So I'm going to run through the pros for DBD. And obviously they all get a point for this. Some of them might sound like they've overlapped, but that's mainly because they need the points for this. So we're just going to quickly blast through this. So you've got a great menu with DBD. You're behind the killer, and you've got that great little jingle that Dead by Daylight like to introduce, that little guitar riff, which really sets the mood. And it's a great menu that carries on as well, because you've still got the interactive aspect of the killer's there and he's getting closer and closer to the survivors, and that's a really cool aspect. I like it in menus where you can actually see the game characters rather than just flat boring screens. Next pro on the list is the quick time to get into the games due to the dedicated servers. Having dedicated servers is reliable, and it means you're just going to get more game for your buck, so that's always a plus. Next pro on the list, you can pick anyone you want to play as. You've got a plethora of survivors and killers, and you can play as any of them, which is really good. It means you can do different things, you've got different perks, different playability, which leads us into the next pro. So there's an in-depth perk and leveling system for this game, which just increases the lifespan of the game. When you've got so many different perks to unlock and so many different levels that you can quickly go through just by playing simple games, which you will do anyway, it makes it for a great leveling system, so that deserves its own plus point. As mentioned already, but on a slightly different tangent, there are multiple characters to play as. You're not just stuck playing one killer or one survivor. You do have the option of playing as different ones, and again, I felt that deserved an extra point, even though it's slightly repeating myself. Varied killers. Varied killers gets his own point just because it's not the same killer. It's not just Jason Voorhees from Friday the 13th. You've got all different characters that you can play as, which leads nicely into the pro point, because there's DLC. You can buy new characters, you can buy new survivors and killers, not just one or the other. And that's really good, and a lot of them are bundled together with a new map as well, so you get like a little pack for each sort of chapter, if you will, and I think that's great. And obviously, with talking about maps, that leads us to the next point. There are lots of maps, and that means the playability is great, and you're not going to get bored as quickly because of the amount of maps you can play on. You've got Haddonfield, you've got Elm Street School, you've got these licensed maps as well as the ones they've created, and that just means a lot of playability. Now, the licensed killers that you get to play as is a massive perk for this game, that they've acquired these licenses, because that brings people over that are fans. Now, I originally actually sold the game Dead by Daylight because they didn't have this, so I just had the standard killers, no one had been released yet, and I ended up getting rid of the game because I got bored of it. But then as soon as they've added all these licensed characters, I've now bought the game back again, so I can play as these characters. So having the licensed killers that you want to play as is imperative for a game like this. Now, the next point, again, we're just doing the pros at the moment, but it kind of filters into the dedicated servers, but it's the fact that you can have quick games. Pick it up, quick game, survive, die, kill, doesn't matter. It's going to be a quick game. You're not going to spend for ages and ages and ages on each game, and then you jump into another one, and it means the playability is increased because you can just jump from game to game to game, and that's quite a lot of fun. Now, the next pro sort of filters in with that as well, but again, it's slightly separate, so it gets its own point marker. But when you die in this game, you can just jump straight into a new game. You're not stuck around waiting for everybody else to finish or escape or die. You're not having to force to spectate to make sure you get the maximum amount of points. You just get your points from that game that you earn, and you go. You crack on with your life while the game still carries on for those that are alive, and that deserves its own point. So it's the same point sort of expanded on and repeated 3 times, but with 3 really good separate defining points. Now, the next pro is that the perks for the killer are changeable. So you have a weakness in a certain area. Say you're not very good at, I don't know, hitting people with your weapon, and you miss all the time. There's a recovery time to that. Well, there's a perk that you can use that will help speed up that recovery time, which helps you instead of hinders you. So because of these perks, you can actually support your own gameplay, and you can become better and stronger and have more success as a killer. So that for me is a major plus point. Again, kind of following on from that, but a separate point on its own, is the killer playability. Because of the different powers that each killer has and the perks that come with them as a base standline, and those that you can also add on later, there's a lot of in-depth playability there. You could be crap with a player, say for instance Trapper, just off the top of my head, this is the first one that came into mind as he's on the front of the game. Say you're playing as Trapper and you absolutely suck in the beginning. That's probably because you've got 0 perks or 1 perk on there. Once you get a feel for how he plays and his sort of weaknesses and your weaknesses combined, you can find other powers and perks that will help you get better. So the playability for that character will change. You'll start off rubbish, you'll learn him a little bit more, you'll learn more about the perks, and as you progress and level up, you'll get better and better and better. And that helps with a lot of players, especially when you're playing as someone and you're good as them, but then you reach the higher ranks and you start struggling. That's where the different powers and perks come in. You could pick up another killer and be like, oh, I'm going to try Hag for a while, or I'm going to try the Nurse for a while, and then you get better with them. So there's a lot of killer playability, and that's mainly due to the different powers and perks. So that works quite well, and that deserves its own point. Now, one of the final points on here is the customize the killers, so you can actually change their appearance. Now, this is a little bit pointless as it is first person, but in the menu screens and things like that, and obviously for people that you're trying to scare, if you can pick a scarier outfit for a character, that can add to the game. And I'm a sucker for customizing. I can spend hours customizing a character before I even jump into a game. So I actually really like the fact that you can change what the killers look like as well as the survivors. And the final pro for DBD. The final pro on this list for them currently. This could change during the point of this, I might think of more, but this is the final one I've got on there currently, and that is that there's future content. That's going to keep this game alive and kicking long into the future. There's going to be new killers, new maps, new survivors, there's going to be new everything. So this game is going to constantly evolve, and it's going to keep it alive, and that really should have more than 1 point, but I'm sticking with my rules, and that's just 1 point. So that's the pros for DBD, Dead by Daylight. Right, so we've done the pros for DBD, but now we need to do the pros for Friday the 13th. So the first one matches up. They're actually identical, some of these, to the other one, but they're plus points. So you're going to give points where there's plus points. Doesn't matter if they're the same as the other game. So F13, great menu again. You've got Jason Part 3 imagery with the ki ma 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 going on in the background. Again, atmospheric, and it's fun to look at. It's a decent menu. They spent time on it. The simplicity of it is so good because it's simple, but it's effective, and it's very, very well done. Now, the next pro point for F13 is it's easy to pick up and play, and there's a very, very low learning curve for this game, whether you're the killer or the survivor. Next pro point is in-depth perk leveling system for increased playability. Again, same as DBD, a lot of these will be mirrored, but because of the leveling system for each character, and the leveling does go on a while, but we'll get to that later, you've got the perks for each character that you can assign, and also you've got the own character traits. Unlike DBD, where all of the characters are baseline the same, pretty much, you have different stats for each character. So say if you're going to be Vanessa, she's a running character, so you know you're safe at running away. But if you're trying to get into a fight with Jason, it's just not going to happen. So with those types of levels to the characters, again, it adds to the playability of the game. Now the next pro point for F13 is varied escape paths and options. You have multiple escape options, and you also have the option to not escape, because there's other things that you can do. But this point is just for the varied escape paths. You can escape by car, escape by boat, call the police, or you can just wait it out. That's it. Varied escape paths make this game very interesting, because you might be planning on doing something, like you've got the battery, you're like, right, so we're obviously going to go with the car repair. Jason's all over the car. Okay, fine. Let's pick one of the other options, because there are other options. Next pro point for Friday the 13th is that you have multiple executions and kills as Jason, And oh my god, there's so many, and they're so good. You can literally pick however you want to kill them, anyhow you want to kill them. It's anyhow. You could do whatever you want, pretty much. If you could think of it, I'm pretty sure F13 thought of it as well. And it's very true to the actual films. There's a lot of kills that have been imported from the films, and you had Kane Hodder doing the motion capture. So again, that's just awesome. And, you know, I kind of want to give it more than a point for that, but I didn't. I just gave it the 1. Now that leads us on to the next thing, which is actually the fact that you can weapon swap. Now, I've just realised that you can technically weapon swap as well on DBD. So I've added that on there as well. So this is a plus for both of them. So you get a weapon swap. Now that's really nice because Friday the 13th is a little bit better in the sense that you can literally pick any of the weapons that you have adjacent once you get to the right fucking level. And once you've got to that level and you've added it on, any of the Jasons then can be equipped with meat cleaver, spear, machete. It doesn't matter. But you can equip it to any of them. Now the weapon swap on DBD is a little bit different because of the fact that they've got their standard weapon and it's just a variant of that weapon. So it's not as good, but it's a plus point for both games. And I'm glad that I thought of it just then. So that's been added on. We'll do a final tally up of the score at the end. So after the multiple execution and kills, we've got multiple characters to play as. Again, this is mirrored from DBD. You've got all the different counsellors and you've got all the different Jasons you can play as. So that's pretty self-explanatory. Now, the varied killers to play as is on there because each Jason has their own different perks and different abilities. So I had to put varied killers on there, although, as you'll probably be shouting at me right now, it's not a varied killer. It's the same Jason Voorhees, just one of them is Roy. It's fine, I know, it's in the cons, and we'll get to it, you impatient little buggers. Now, one of the plus points here that we haven't seen already is there's no need for perks to play and win. You actually don't need any perks to play and win this game. You can just play the game, pick a character and play as them. You don't have to assign anything extra to them. You don't have to. It's not a necessity. Whereas I found with DBD that I had to. Playing without perks was an absolute nightmare. I did a couple of games where I was a killer with 0 perks just to see how difficult it was. And some games, embarrassingly, I killed nobody. And then in other games, when I had full perks, I killed everyone. So, yes, obviously there's going to be the difference in the fact that how I'm playing at the time and how obviously the survivors are playing. But the bare bones of it is that the perks help. And that's as a survivor as well for DBD. Whereas you don't need any of that in F13. So that was a plus point that we hadn't yet seen, and it was definitely needed. Now, F13 gets this point, and it technically could be argued for both, but I only argued it for F13. And that is the fact that it doesn't need to be a team effort to win this game. It doesn't. It really, really doesn't. I've worked as a team a few times, but 9 times out of 10, I'm doing my own thing. I'm doing my own thing for me to win. So you don't have to be a team effort. Whereas I find with DBD, you do have to. You do have to be a team. Because if you're not helping each other, you're all going to die very, very quickly. But that, again, is kind of infringing on our cons list. So let's keep it pro for now. So another one for the F13 list is the multiple options for survivors. And what I mean by that is that they can hide, they can run, they can fight, or they can escape. And I guess you've also got the option to do nothing, which eventually could lead you to escaping if Jason doesn't find you. So you've got options. Now, in comparison with DBD, again, we're probably going to be on the con list, but with DBD, you kind of just have to fix the generators and run away. The hiding doesn't really work because most of the time they know to look in the lockers. So yeah, you're kind of just on the gens and you're on your back foot as well. So the next pro, you got multiple options for survivors, yes, but you've also got more people to kill as Jason. Now that's because there's bigger lobbies and there's more survivors to kill instead of just 4 with Dead by Daylight, which is quite a good pro, to be honest, because there's a lot of killing to be done. There's normally 8 if they call Tommy Jarvis, and if they don't, it's 7, but that's still 3 more than 4. Now, a plus point that we haven't addressed on here again is that you can actually kill the killer. That's right, you can kill Jason Voorhees, and I've seen it happen a few times and I've done it myself. Check out my channel. But with that, it adds another element to the game, that you're not 100% defenseless. You don't just have to run away and just escape. You've got another added option, which again I guess kind of filters in with the survivors have the option, and I did say that they can fight back, but this is kind of separate on its own because you can actually kill the killer. You can win. You can team together and kill him, and it's not that hard to do. It's just people, their communication skills, especially with the noobs that are playing it at the moment, are just they can't get it together to do it. So, but yeah, that's a good pro point. So the next one is offline modes, and that helps with playability, man. If you're going to play offline, you've got the challenges, which are actually really fun, and again, based on the film. So if you're a fan of the film, this game's for you. And you've also got bots. If you just want to practice with the Jason you're not so good at, you kind of have a practice mode. And the bots is quite fun because, you know, again, this is infringing on the cons list, but you don't get to play as Jason that often. So you can just jump in, kill a bunch of bots, and have fun with the kills. Just practice, which is quite fun in itself. Now the next pro on this list is that the killer is in third person, and this, some people might not like this, but this for me is a personal preference. I prefer to be third person when I'm playing games. There are a few exceptions. I do like some first person games, but realistically I prefer to be in third person, and that's why it's a pro point for this game. Now, obviously you've got options as a survivor, but we do have to talk about the multiple options for the killer. And I don't just mean the kills, which we've already stated. I'm talking about the way that you can play. You can be stealthy with stalk. You can be surprising with morph. You can shift and catch up with people, or you can lay traps. Like, you do have different options, and they're all at your hands. You can choose how you're going to play this. If you trap stuff up, great. If you can all put in traps and just go after people, hacking and slashing, great. If you're going to grab people, great. You can literally do this game how you want to do this game. You're not really forced into one narrative. Yes, I know both games are linear in the fact that if you're a killer, you just got to kill everyone, but these are different ways to do this. So that is a plus point for me. Now, obviously with that, you've got the price of the game itself. There's no DLC. So again, that might be a con, but the game is all inclusive. You pay for it, you're getting everything that comes with the game. So it's kind of a plus and a con, but again, we'll get to the cons. Now, there are hiding spots, and there's a plethora of them. You can hide in wardrobes, you can hide in beds, you can hide freestanding if you crouch behind something. There's a lot of different hiding spots, and that again is, I know it's multiple options for the survivor, but it's a great asset because you can find stuff or places to hide that you didn't really think about before, and that again, that adds to the playability of the game, especially as a survivor. Now, obviously you have the ability to repair things in both games, but in F13 repairing is just a lot more fun and interactive. The mini game, you've got to hit them skill checks, same as DBD, but it's faster paced, there's more skill checks, and it's just more interactive. I do find myself falling asleep a little bit with Dead by Daylight until that sound notifies that I've got to do a skill check, so that for me is a plus point, that it's a bit more interactive. Another plus point for F13, again, drawing from the cons of DBD, you cannot trap yourself as Jason. If you set a trap, and it's your trap that you've set, and you step in it, it's not going off. And I guess in real life it would, but as a killer, you don't want that. And as I found with Dead by Daylight a few times, I do actually end up stepping in my own traps, which is fucking annoying. Again, that's a personal preference, but I like the fact that I can be safe in the knowledge if I've set a trap, I don't have to set it off. Not to be said for Survivor though, because you can trap yourself, but I feel like that's more realistic. Now, this is a bit of a silly one, but as a survivor, you can dance. Let's do the survivor dance. Pick from a plethora of dances to do at your disposal to tease your opponent or your other survivors. Now, yeah, the survivor dance. It's something fun. They didn't need to do it. They added it into the game. They're getting a plus point. And the last pro on the list, unless I think of any others, is the better loading screens. Artwork. It's nice. It's not just the logo of the game. That's really nice to look at. So yeah, just something simple like that gets them a point. Better loading screens. Thanks, guys. Okay, guys, so we are now getting on to the cons of both games. So, let's start with DVD. There is a steep learning curve for some aspects of the game. Learning everything is not easy, and it's not picking up and just playing and smashing the game. There is a learning curve. Some might say this is a pro, but for me it's a bit of a con, because the first games you play can be frustrating as hell because you're not really 100% sure on what you should be doing. Now, number 2, you can escape only 2 ways. Well, one really. You escape, and that's by repairing the generators. It's kind of boring. Just one way to escape. Yes, there is a hatch, but God, are you going to fucking find that? I found one once out of so many games. Number 3, limited kills. Limited kills, guys. It's a game about being a killer or survivor, and the killers don't really have any kills. You might be able to kill one person by your own hand because you've got the right perk. But if you haven't got that, you're just slamming people on hooks. And that's very repetitive, and it's very, very boring. Now, a con here, which kind of also translates to being a con on the F13 list, there's no Jason Voorhees. No Jason Voorhees. You've got your rip-off, who's Trapper. I'm not playing as him ever again. He's no Jason Voorhees. Next con, you really need perks as a survivor or killer. As I mentioned earlier, without them, you're doomed. Now, this game has to be a team effort, or you're gonna fail as a survivor. And that kind of annoys me a little bit, because as I've said already, in comparison with F13, you can actually just go it alone, and you can succeed. Now, as a survivor, your one job, as I've already mentioned, is just to run and do generators. This got a separate minus point because it's all you do as a survivor, and it's annoying. There are less people in this game and in the lobby, which helps to some degree, but there's just less people. It's just a smaller game. There's only 4 of you. Once one of you dies, the other 3 are pretty fucked if it's early. So, more people, more chance of surviving. That's how I look at my odds. And talking about less people, you can't even fight back. Yes, you could drop a pallet on someone, but really, that's just going to slow them down and piss them off. I don't like the fact that I can't fight back. I don't know what D by Daylight, DBD, God, what tongue twister DBD we're thinking, but there's no offline mode. What if my internet goes down and I still want to kill? What if I want to practice? What if I want to practice? I'm just not going to practice? Okay, cool. Thanks, guys. Your killer is stuck in first person mode. He's stuck in first person. I hate first person. Unless it's a shooting game, I'm really not interested in first person mode. Give us an option. First and third. Or just make it third, like the survivors. I know they were trying to be hip and trendy, but I personally hate first person mode, so yeah, that sucks for me. Now again, staying with the killer for a little bit, the killer's mainly limited to hooks and gen protection. Much like the survivor, run and gen, you got killer who is hook and gen. That's it. Get him on a hook, protect the gens. Now, we did talk about DLC as a pro, but it's also in there as a minus. And that's because you've got to spend more money after purchase. And this with games does infuriate me. I appreciate that they're doing the DLC, and it is relatively affordable, so it's not so much of a sore spot for me on this game. But the fact that they weren't already included, especially the licensed killers, I mean, Jesus Christ, we're paying nearly double the price for all the characters now. Might as well have bought the game twice. Now, as mentioned with F13 in the pros, this is a con for DBD. It's limited hiding spots. You kind of just have to crouch behind shit. You don't really have anywhere else you can hide. Kind of annoying. Kind of necessary. Now, we mentioned again with Pro from F13 that there was awesome loading screens. Well, DBD, they're boring. It's just that 5 symbol, you know, the 4 with the 1 through it. And it's just, oh, silly little tally logo. Yeah, we've seen it. Give us something else. Give us something dynamic. You know, your menus are dynamic. Why did you just slack off on the loading screens? Now, don't get me started on repairing, because as we mentioned already, it's fun on F13, but it's not on DBD. Repairing is an absolute drag on this game, and it just goes on and on and on. So the repairing is a no from me. And the last con on the list, you'll be happy to know, as I'm moaning quite a lot now. I touched on it already, but you can trap yourself with a bear trap. Fuck you, trapper. What are you doing, mate? Pointless, aren't you? Jesus. So now we're on to the cons of F13. Now, first of all, it's slow to get into a game. That's mainly due to having no dedicated servers. So that is a pain in the arse. And then when you do get into a game, you get kicked because the host decided they wanted to leave. There's no host migration. Now, just to be fair, I didn't actually include host migration or host issues as a con. I'm now adding it. Okay, so we're adding that point onto the list. So that will affect the final score. So no host migration and dedicated servers, 2 separate points, or lack of dedicated servers. Now the next point is that you will be a counsellor or survivor for the majority of this game when you're playing online. Because the killer is picked at random, or it seems to be at random, or it's just bollocks unfair. But yeah, that's it. You're forced into being a counsellor survivor, which is a main plus point, which actually I'm going to add on because I didn't include that earlier, that you actually get to pick whether you are... Oh no, I have included that, sorry. Yeah, no, I've included it on the list. So yeah, you can only pick to be a survivor really, because even if you set your preference for Jason, it doesn't fucking matter. You're going to be a counsellor anyway. Now, it's only fair to mark this game down for having no DLC, because we marked the other game up for having DLC. So the no DLC means that there's nothing added new to this game, and that's obviously due to the legal issues going on with it. And you don't even get to be Savini Jason, because if you pick this game up now, he's gone. He was long gone when I picked the game up, and I wasn't that late to the game either. So you can only play as Jason Voorhees and Roy, and that's a minus point, really. Just because you are stuck playing Jason Voorhees. If I want to be Freddy Krueger, Michael Myers, I can't just pretend the guy's wearing a bag over his head or a hockey mask. He's clearly Jason. So that is a negative. I did put it as a plus, but it's a negative on DBD for no Jason Voorhees. I've got to give it a negative for only being Jason Voorhees. Now, we spoke about maps already, but there is no real variation in maps for F13. It's pretty much the same maps recycled. You got about 2 or 3, and a couple of them have a full, bigger scale version of themselves. It does get very repetitive and a little bit boring, so no real variation in maps there. Now, we've already spoke about the short, quick, nice, tasty games of DBD, but unfortunately the games by F13, if you're staying for all your points, can be very, very long. Even if you're playing as Jason, they can be quite long, so it does get a minus point. There needs to be a balance between both games, I feel. I don't think one's nailed it over the other. I think sometimes DBD, the games are a little bit quick, especially as I've done a few games where the killer's not even seen me and I've not had any issues and the game's over immediately. Yeah, that's annoying as well as long games. So neither game's got it right yet, but they're both on the right path, and hopefully someone will make a game in the future combining the two pros and cons, hopefully from my list because I'm important, and they'll make the perfect slasher game, but we'll see. Now, obviously, we've talking about when you die in DBD, you can jump straight into another game, which is fun, keeps the playability going. But when you die in F13, or you rage quit, unless you rage quit, you have to wait for ages. You have to wait 20 minutes if you died straight away unlucky, you know? So there's that element, and a lot of people now are actually rage quitting because they're at the right level. Well, that is another minus on the list, so there we go. Now, one point that my partner pointed out, because she likes watching me play these games, she won't play them herself, but the survivors actually do randomly give themselves away from time to time when playing this, which makes the stealth element that I bragged about earlier actually somewhat of a hindrance. If you're playing with a character that doesn't have good composure, and even if you do play as a character with good composure, they might randomly scream out when Jason's near for like no fucking reason, and it can kill you and cost you the game, so it has to be a minus point on that, I'm afraid. Now, people who are max level tend not to play properly. As I mentioned, they do rage quit, or in this case, for its own topic and its own minus point, they piss about in the car for fucking ages. They'll get in it, and they'll drive, and they'll drive, and they'll drive, and they've got no intention of escaping. That's just to wind up whoever's playing Jason, but as a survivor, that fucking winds me up. You're not playing properly. Let me get in the car, let me escape, because that's what I want to do. Now, talking about survivors being fucking annoying, some survivors actually team up with the killer. So they're helping Jason find other survivors. What pointless bullshit is this? The game is heavily favoured in Jason's favour anyway. It's in his favour. He's got all the skills. He's got unlimited stamina. He's basically invincible, because no one can actually kill him, because when they do try and kill him, they fuck it up. Why are you helping him? Stupid idiots. He kills you anyway. I've seen it. I've watched. I've spectated. I've watched. Now, moving on from that, the other online issue we have, and I know I've put no dedicated servers on here already, but this is a separate issue related to that issue. It's laggy, and there's connection issues all the time. And I know they're interlinked, but they are technically two separate issues, so there's a minus point there as well. Now, we spoke about leveling up earlier for DBD as a positive, but it's a con here because it takes forever. I'm still not 150. I think I'm at 119 now, and it takes you to 150 to unlock everything, and 113 to get weapon swap, and you know, to get full bloodiness you need to be 150 to get bloodstained clothes. I've already got semi-bloodstained clothes because I'm on my way, but god, that's a drag. Why does it take so long? Why have they done this? So obviously we've covered this, but again, the host migration obviously is on there. That's the new one I've added on, so I don't need to go over that, so that's fine. But the final point for this is this game has zero future. It's probably going to die before daylight. And the reason is because of the legal issues, the server issues, all the issues I mentioned piled together with the fact that no one's really paying attention to how this game goes anymore. It means that the game's got no future. There's no DLC, it's not coming. So eventually this game will die a death. So there are all the cons for both the games. I'm now going to move on to final thoughts. Okay guys, so this is my final thoughts. Now, on the spreadsheet that I've put together with the pros and the cons, especially the ones I've added during this little podcast session, is the final scores read as this. We have a grand total of -1 points for DBD, and for F13 we've got +8. So it was very, 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 very close. We had 22 pro points for F13, 16 for DBD, and then we had -17 cons and -14 respectively. So yeah, so F13 wins with 8 positive points. Now, my final thoughts though will be that DBD will survive probably longer than F13, because F13 is going to have to rely on the hardcore fans, such as myself, to keep the game going, and I think that will eventually fizzle out. And DBD has more of a future, so I think overall the winner will probably be DBD, but I can't lie with my own scoring system and my own, you know, not being biased, but my preference is actually F13 out of the two. That might change, but I played both of them again today just to refresh myself back to back, and yeah, the limitations of DBD led me to appreciate F13 a lot more, and I feel it is a superior game in general as a whole. I do love DBD, don't get me wrong. If this was a separate game review for that game, it would score very, very highly. It's probably my second favourite game to play at the moment, but F13 takes the win, and the +8 points show that. I was as fair as it could be. So there you have it guys, Friday the 13th wins, but I think if you're playing the long game and we have this conversation in a year, 2 years time, that might be different. DBD have got so much potential to fix stuff that's wrong with it, and, you know, and it is a good solid game, but I think in the future they're going to pull forward and especially when they get more DLC, people will just forget about F13 and they'll be bored of playing as all the Jasons and Roy. So yeah, you know, you could say it's a draw on that benefit, but we haven't got there yet. We haven't got to that future state. So the winner of this battle is Friday the 13th, the game. I hope you enjoyed that, guys. If you liked the video, let me know. And obviously, please like, share, comment, follow, and subscribe. All that good stuff. And I won't say I'll see you in the next one, because everyone says that. And I don't see you. I can't see you now. And I'm not going to see you in the next one. I will be in the next one, and you will watch me in the next one. But I won't see you in the next one. So I will look at my recording device. I will look at my microphone. I'll see them in the next one. And I look forward to you watching my video at the next one. Thanks. Peace.